terms of like focusing in what to kind of work on with this stuff, is there a specific stage of the process that you feel you want some particular help with, besides sort of just getting some settings? Like, I want to just make sure I kind of like get to all the stuff that you want to work on.
Just want help with actually, you know, just setting up, getting like, and we can do like a, you know, I can lay a vocal through your mic, and you mucking around with the preamp in my setup to get it sounding, you know, top-notch quality the way that you would do it. And after I record that vocal, you EQing it the way that you would usually do it, because like I said, I don't think I can't quite get it to sound great. Like getting the bass out of my voice is a challenge, you know, where it's always so muggy.
And what mic are you using right now?
So it's a TLM 102.
Okay, yeah, nice. How do you find that one?
Yeah, I found like the quality to be pretty dope, but in terms of like, even when I'm recording, I have to turn the preamp up more to hear myself in the vocal. Whereas when I had the Lewitt mic that I sold just before I got this mic, I found like I didn't have to have the preamp up as much.
Yeah,
like
well, I mean, these capsules are normally pretty bright, so you'll get a little more of that kind of transient coming through.
But what I found like with that one is, the brightness, because with the sounds, I found I didn't have to, you know, edit out a lot of those with the TLM 102, whereas that and the Blueberry that I use for the last, I used that for about 3 years as well. No, 2 years. And I found like the brightness I had to, you know, cut out with the
all the like plosives come through, just like the Bluebirds are, I feel, particularly sensitive. Even the have you seen the big like fucking tube ones that are like
no,
they look like a drip feeder that are like a foot long? It's fucking weird, man.
Yeah, right.
They sound cool, but they're just like they're quite sensitive. So if you get those rushes of air, it's kind of tough.
But I just found like it was just way too time consuming, so as to why I got the other mic to try.
I mean, 102s are great. Like the 103 for a long time was kind of my workhorse mic.
Yeah, that's the one that I wanted to experiment with next.
Yeah,
like I'm renting this one at the moment, and I'm gonna rent it for another month and then rent the 103, but maybe, you know, the Lewitt.
Yeah, either. I mean, whatever works best for your voice. Because I remember, I don't think I could pick the frequency ranges from memory, but I remember there was a couple, like a sort of low-ish fundamental where your voice needed just a bit of a boost to kind of like bring that bass in, and then a bit of top end. And I think maybe about like a 2K, like a bit of like nasaliness and stuff, which is just a fucking Australian thing.
Nah, my vocals
like you gotta have tight notches for Aussies.
For sure. I've tried to work on like getting that nasalness out of when I record. Not like consciously not going up higher registers to, I guess, to avoid the nasal, and rapping more from the stomach instead of like from the throat. And like Nas, he raps a lot, you know, from his throat and nasal, and he comes out very nasally, the same as Eminem.
Yeah.
But I've noticed over time Eminem even sounds less nasally. I guess he's...
Yeah, I think just from like touring and stuff has just worked on his technique a little bit. Yeah.
Sure. So I've got a track here that I'm working on. And,
I just want to pull up console real quick just to make sure it's all kind of packed in. Just sometimes when the software swaps back and forth, it can kind of freak out a little bit.
So that's the console that I'm running off, and so I've got the so I've actually got this one here dialed in at that level, and I've got this one. I've got a compressor. I don't know if I'm using too much with the 2. Should it just be the 1?
It would depend on the gain that's coming in, to be honest.
Because I do notice like I have to use the 2 to get the loudness in my headphones, and even to get a vocal take. Registers.
Okay.
So it's a matter of playing around, with this here to get it to a standard.
You just got like Spotify or something, just so we can make sure we're getting a level coming through.
Okay.
Well,
just play this backing track.
So, it doesn't like the Apollo. Yeah, it's not seeing it.
I've got my Apollo and the thing that hooks up.
Yeah, if it doesn't... Give me one sec. If it doesn't patch him real quick, I might get you to bust that out, just to save like having to mess around for too long with just like if we need to do like a firmware change or something. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. You just got regular Thunderbolt, right?
Yeah.
This side, yeah, dope. Awesome.
Yeah, it should register because I've handed my rig to another mate, and he's got another thing.
Oh no, yeah, you're all good.
Cool.
I've got some other Unison stuff on here that I think could be interesting with your voice, but for the nature of this, I'd rather stick to just the stuff you have.
Yeah.
Which I think just makes sense.
For sure.
Alright, dope. In that case, let's pull Logic back up. So, did you produce this one?
No, so like my process these days is just find beats, producers, and it's just a quicker process.
Oh, dude, absolutely.
I've got like so many spare beats in the can that I haven't even put together or rapped over. So
Side by side. Awesome. And you're working from this drive right now?
Yeah,
dope. Awesome, man.
So like I've got a vocal recording.
Actually, I might swap you just so I can be with the monitors if that's cool.
Easy.
Yeah. So I can kind of like hear what's happening.
Cool. That's the hook and just verse.
Nothing left to do but stand on my own too. Got nothing left to do but stand on my own too. On the brand, the factory, so classy, never tacky. On the brand, the factory, so classy, never tacky. A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like my Kill Bill. Can't surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months now, branching out like tree trunks. So that's at least stunts just in the mud. On dark hunts now, get a crown.
To like get up to the top of what's happening.
Oh, okay. So the way I get up to the top is just
oh yeah, cool. This is a tune. So I kind of want to see just sort of like a general head of what's going on. Do you use this like expander at all? As like a gate?
I've only been playing around probably the last
got nothing left to do but staying on my own too. On the brand, yeah, the factory, so classy, never tacky. On the brand, yeah, the factory, so classy, never tacky. A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow,
good,
designed in my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick
And
with
this
the
is just
light
the one
Kill Bill.
EQ that's going on
Surround
here?
yourself with
Yeah.
big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use
right
it as
now,
a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months now, branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts,
So,
just in the
like,
mud.
you get
On
a
dark
tap
hunts
the
now, get it crunk.
to get it lowered.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Oh, actually, no, that's reverse. So you gotta go back into there.
Yeah. Come on. It's just small things, hey, when it's just like, yeah, setup is slightly different.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Let me look.
Yeah, go for it. Pull them down, because right now what I'm seeing is, yes, I feel the like input could be a little more catered to what your vocals are doing.
Yeah.
But right now you've got like the SSL compressor and the RVox and the J37 before there's an EQ kind of dealing with any of that build up in the presence range. So what the J37 is doing after a little bit of kind of phasing from the imager, it's going to be adding a little bit more distortion before some of those notches are taken out. So you're going to get kind of a build up of that like.
Yeah, and that's what I do notice. Like often it sounds distorted. So that's the reverse vocal change here. So if you want to just get up a normal EQ or an actual nicer EQ.
Either or. Just to, because I'm already saying just a few ways I think I can help just in kind of the arrangement of how the chain is flowing into itself.
Yeah.
Just because right now some of the additional compression and effects are happening kind of like post reverb and post a little bit of like phasing that's going to come from the imager.
Yeah.
So because of that, you're going to get a little bit of artifacting before the vocals are really going to be kind of controlled.
Oh, okay.
So this is good. Like just I think you will get a lot more control with some of these things when just the kind of order of operations is a little more defined.
Yeah, I came across some YouTube videos where they were talking about importance of order of the plugins in your vocal chain, and I'm like, okay.
Oh, it gets fucking complicated, man, because it's just how stuff stacks, especially compression, because if you have, say, a 2 and a 4, 2 and a 2, you don't necessarily just get a 4, you get an 8 because of how it kind of stacks. What is it, logarithmically or whatever it is? Yeah.
Yep. So that's just EQ for. So I'll take off this EQ.
Yeah, what I'll do, I might actually like start to like strip it back if that's okay.
Yeah, just strip it back for sure.
Just to kind of like really pull like what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So let's pull. I got on here. So vocal writer, I like this one. Can be. Whoops. How did you? Is it just like?
So you just grab the middle of it to pull up.
Yeah, there we go. I reckon that here. So start with the RVox. Boom. Because you want like a little bit of compression, then your de-esser. So boom. Come on.
Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. Miss my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands inside the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months now, branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get a crumb. Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. Miss my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands inside the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months now, branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get it crunk.
Right?
Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, bozo, designed it in my doge. Miss my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands inside the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a
is it the reverb or the, I guess the
knowledge and use it as a tool.
the imager that's going to be splitting it, right?
Now branching out like tree
Yeah,
trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get it crunk. Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need
So the imager is fucking awesome on like a bus or something that's sort of getting a like parallel of the track and pushing it to the side. That can kind of mess with your phasing a little bit for like individual tracks from a single
My
source.
intelligence and drill, sick with it like Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands inside the back
So
cave,
that's
yeah,
even
came
like
from the
just taking up
underground.
some
Dig up
fundamental
the
and there's still like
catalog,
less
this
of that
poetry
kind of like
a
low end build
monologue.
up.
I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school.
So
Compete game,
you're gonna get a
compete
build up
knowledge
about
and use
here.
it as a tool. Did
So-
5 albums in 12 months,
So kind
now
of like
branching out like
250
tree
to
trunks without
330 is
silly
going to be
stunts,
that
just in the
boom,
mud
boom,
on
boom, the like
dark hunts, now
fundamental
get
of
it
like
crunk.
where you'd
Lot
kind of
of
find
rappers
that
sound
kick
piss
drum.
poor, they need to practice
So you're
some
going to get a
more.
lot
Spend
of
less time in the
build
Gucci
up, and
store,
if
have
there's too
more
much of
spirit like
that,
an Ouija
you
board.
hear
When I hear
that the
you
whole
like
thing becomes
lukewarm, ain't
muffled. It's
rare
like
enough
you
like a
just put this
unicorn.
over
Got
your
my own
face.
flow,
And that's what I've
bozo,
noticed, like,
designed in
yeah,
my dojo. Miss my
having
intelligence
everything
and
kind
drill,
of
sick with
notice
it
that
like
distortion.
Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big
So
egos
much
that'll
on there.
only bring you down.
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah, well, part of it is
it's colliding with that section where it should be allocated for the 808 and the drums. Is the 808 in that section? as
yeah.
well?
So part of what happens is so the 808 will be a bit lower, kind of down around about here.
Yeah.
And then you have the fundamental of your vocal, but that's also going to be for like kind of just the big low end of the kick drum and the like notes of the 808, so sort of those upper harmonics.
Okay.
Whereas this is sort of the, I guess I would explain it as kind of like the origin point of your voice. So
Yeah.
this is sort of just that big, if you were to isolate it to,
Yep.
I mean, really like the best way to explain it, if I just pulled it all the way down here, just boom, 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 and so that's literally your throat like resonating to create the notes.
Yeah.
And if that starts to sort of come up a little bit louder, because it's the part of your voice that really kind of shapes all of this other stuff, it's going to immediately take over and then just become this sort of like big like muffly mess.
Yeah.
And so on top of that, you want to be able to hear it, because that's
Yeah.
sort of where like the low end of the punch is coming from. But to bring up the energy of this versus bringing up the energy of something a little bit closer to that top end,
Yeah.
it takes a lot more space up in the mix.
Okay.
So a lot of the time you just want to give it just like a little bit of a notch here, like seriously it's only just like a couple dB.
Yep.
Rolling off the stuff you don't need. Normally starting at about kind of like 40 or 50. Give it a little roll here, and then
a lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground.
So if you notice how I started to like narrow it closer and closer, it started to get muffled and then kind of control it a little bit. So right here, this is sort of your like 1K. So just a little bit, you're starting to get a little bit brighter without it being a little too like muffled.
Yeah.
And I think let's find this just like 500. I just kind of just want you to see like where kind of the build-ups of your voice just reacts to the EQ.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time it's just making a couple intentional choices and having this more or less in the beginning of the chain. You're then adding your compression and your vocal rider and all those different effects based around a sound that already kind of locks in to what's catered to your voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people do it differently, and sometimes you kind of need that compression to boost it. But if the sound isn't shaped before it comes into the compression and before the level of everything's brought up, not only are you bringing up all of the nice parts of your voice, but you're bringing up all of this stuff that sometimes you can't hear, or as we heard with this sort of notch here, can come quite overpowering very quickly.
Yeah.
And that can work, but you're then later on having to do more to control it, which you could just kind of notch out the way earlier on.
For sure.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the
man, it's crazy, man.
Like
And I reckon there needs to be one more, like around about here. I think there's just like that 2K build up.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
And each vocal, like every artist is different, depending on your vocal tone and voice and stuff like that. The way it's going to be EQ'd.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's just like the way you talk isn't like anyone else that exists. So that's going to be the same way you kind of rap. And something that I think, especially when it comes to like tutorials and people really sort of mixing for this stuff, is they treat rap vocals and sung vocals in the same way, which I don't think should really happen. Like the way I treat a rap vocal in something, listening in this, is I'm not going to be very soft and gentle the way I would with sort of like a tight melodic vocal, because like the best way to approach this is really like you're a percussive instrument. Like you're creating a very tightly woven kind of like rhythmic cadence, as opposed to trying to like draw melodies together in a different way. So I think it's really important to really focus on what are kind of the core elements of this, which is you have a very kind of defined, very kind of conversational vocal tone. So I'm just going to reach in for, okay, you sound really nice with a notch here. This needs to come down a bit so you have a balance of your top end, and then that's kind of it. Really, like that's kind of my. I just like to sort of bring
there's a whole fucking science to it if you think about it, eh?
Oh, it's crazy fucking animal.
But the lazy thing that I've been doing, is like trying to find. It eventually just started with me buying a vocal chain from a person in America, and then tweaking it to my own taste, like just playing around with the EQ here and there and certain plugins. And every time I record a vocal, just boom, hit one button and it loads up. And just think that, that's it, that's normal. Like I'm trying to get this album done, so that's a quick process and it sounds okay maybe. But it's not until after I put it out and reflect, it's like, man, I could have done that better. I could have maybe spent more time EQing.
I think there's benefit to both, and I think maybe had you not had that like quick accessibility, you might not have worked as much to get the content down. True. So like especially when it comes into like a vocal session, I have some pretty kind of robust templates, because I don't want to be fucking around for the first hour. I just want to get in and get started. But that being said, you want to kind of go in later and put your engineer hat on, and part of that is having a confidence in your setup that whatever you capture, you can just worry about that later.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of want to work on you with, just a couple things. I think just even in your like vision settings on the Apollo could sort of just tighten it up a little bit.
That'll be good.
But it already sort of comes together a little nicer. So I see
A lot
what
of
this
rappers
half
sound
ups
piss
is
poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the
So I've dialed
Gucci
it
store.
back
Have more
just a
spirit
little
like a
bit.
Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare.
Don't need to really worry about that gate. So before it was coming down to sort of like about kind of -6 or 8. So the best, there's no like hard and fast rule, but especially if you're going to be sort of layering up compression, really honestly it's after about 3 dB that you really start to hear the artifacts of it.
Okay.
So if you're going to sort of like 6 and 7, then putting another 6 and 7, not only are you going to be bringing up all of the stuff that wasn't EQ'd out before, but it's going to be kind of really reinforcing those elements.
Yeah. It's going to be at the forefront.
Yeah, and especially if you're not as confident in kind of setting your like attack and release times really perfectly, you just kind of want to be careful with that stuff.
Yeah.
That being said, like this sounds nice on your vocal. I think what would be how I would kind of tackle this. I'll take the vocal rider off. Do you use the CLA 76 much?
I have, but I haven't been able to again like perfect it to get like a good balance. So by all means do it.
Yeah.
So you have to go down to so get out of that.
Yeah.
And getting it up in stereo, you would have to move the de-esser up somewhere to allow room.
Okay.
To get it in stereo.
Gotcha.
So you can get rid of the de-esser if you we'll eventually use it, but
no, we'll use that de-esser. I like that.
I guess, you know, like you can move whatever you've got up here in the blue up more in case you want to add more in. But yeah, you press in that section there to get it up in stereo.
Okay. I gotcha.
It's really fickle the way like
it's Logic can be a bit like that.
Yeah.
So 76. Boom. Easy. So I just feel like this will just help me kind of, because I feel like if I just do what I normally do, that can sort of just bring your attention to stuff that works. But I'm not trying to mix this. I'm just trying to bring your focus to just like what I'm trying to pay attention to. Because ultimately, like, I would rather, instead of you taking away a polished vocal, just kind of the knowledge to be able to do this yourself. Which, like, it already sounds good, man. It's just a matter of just like being a little more clear about sort of what that order of operations means. So let me just take this off real quick.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like a Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, designed in my
especially for like a hip hop vocal where like you have really hard and fast transients, something like a 76 is awesome because they're like obnoxiously fast.
Okay.
And pretty much honestly like release almost all the way off. Because if it go da 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 da, like as in part of your flow is really based on reinforcing those upbeats. It's not like you're going da 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 da. It's da 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 na 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 na. Like you're creating this kind of
like
push and pull.
Skip.
Exactly,
It's
and
like
so because of that, you don't necessarily want the compressor to fuck with your timing, which if it is really aggressive, you'll start to really hear that back and forth more so than your natural flow.
Okay.
So I'm actually trying to use this to get out of your way because I like sort of naturally what you've done in the track. So release really quick, it pretty much means as it kind of like locks into those transients, it's going to duck away very quickly. So because of that, you can actually get away with some heavier compression because it's not going to like really go da da da. It's going to kind of like sway around a little bit. So even now, it's up to like 5. It's sort of just like it keeps like peaking it this way. Which,
it's more of a like gives you a nicer sound with it. It's like a glide.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely, man. And then even the bluey is going to be a little nicer. It's a little bit more high gain.
The vocals sound like a lot better already.
Oh, dude, it's great, man.
They need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like a Ouija board.
So then
lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, bozo designed in my Sick with the like Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands inside the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. How to rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete.
Yeah.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more, spend less time.
Because now, in a really positive way, you start to get the like piss poor and dirt, as in you're not just getting the words, you're getting the detail of how you uniquely say them.
Yeah,
dude, 100%. And that, as you know, like that's half of your flow, like how you deliver those words.
I always like kept that in mind, like mixing was like, damn, like hearing stuff like on Spotify or on the radio, I was like, man, how do they get their mixes to where the thing is just so, there's so much clarity and impact. You hear the punchline with the boom, boom at the end of each line. I was like, damn. It's probably, you know, obviously it's because of the mugginess and everything else that's going on that's, like you said, distorting the vocal to be able to do that,
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Like, there's a lot of the time it's because they have really robust vocal chains, but also sort of a breakdown of all of the stems. So say, for example, with this, part of the way we can sort of go in and reinforce what the, really just the space of the vocal is, if you had the stems, or even in sort of adjusting the EQ of the instrumental, going to where that bass build up is at around about, it was sort of like 280 to 330. So notching that out of the low end of the track, because that then gives you the space for that fundamental to come through without having to boost it and sort of get to that muddiness. So I to be honest, normally I do both, cut a little bit on the vocal and then cut even more on the bass. And then because of that, the best way to kind of just reinforce that space is to find where else you can really bring attention. So if you're sort of getting this build up of this bass around 300, move it down to the fundamental of the 808, which is more about 100. So if you kind of reinforce that, you're not missing that 300. So the vocal just becomes a bit more clear, and there's more low end, so you can find a trade-off that really works for you. Yeah, so we'll keep going on this.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more, spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like no Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, bozo designed in my dojo. My intelligence and drill, sick with the like Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that only bring you down.
Fundamental for yourself for like a sibilance is going to be around like 7 to 7.5K. So before it was still catching it, but it was just a little bit low, so it probably was missing some of the like G's and the S's. And that's the de-esser is the only thing I'd recommend to go over like 5 dB. But if you go really far over, if we're just gonna really like commit to get really like muddy, like it can just completely kind of destroy that presence range if not like control. And so the best way to level it is sort of find that real peak of what's really making it catch, which for here is about, I don't know, like 7.3K. And then listening to specifically when you say piss poor and some more, just that little like as in just to make sure it's actually catching those bits and is not just catching the sharper transients.
For sure.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more, spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like no Ouija board.
So now it's actually sort of like hitting that rhythm, and it means that you can bring up the level of the vocal without that sort of harshness and sibilance coming through.
For sure.
And if you want, you can put another de-esser a little bit later. But it's important just to sort of level out. So we've taken out a bunch of stuff here, which is going to make it a little bit brighter. Hit that sort of faster compression, so some of that sibilance is going to come through. We're now controlling that. And then is when I kind of like what the Arvox was doing before. So now we're balancing it out with, after you've kind of shaped the vocal, brought the level up, tackled that sibilance in the top end. Now getting something that is a little bit more of a slower release compression. Because as you see,
Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more.
It's just a real sort of slow build like this, which is, if that was the only compression, it's not going to be quick enough to kind of grab your flow. But because you've already shaped the compression with the 76 around what your vocal is doing, this isn't doing as much, it's just sort of like holding that level a bit. So they're sort of performing a bit of a different function. And as we're kind of pushing the level, it's just good practice to bring stuff down just like minus 0.3, just so it doesn't sort of like clip and distort. Alright, and now I'd say let's probably bring that SSL up. So again, this is like...
Do you find that's the best EQ on the market in terms of like as a plugin?
The SSL?
Yeah.
Fab Filter, man. It's a little pricier, so I would...
Fab Filter.
Yeah, Pro Q2 or Pro Q3. There's not a single mix I haven't used Pro Q2 on in probably the last like 4 years.
Is that a WAV one?
It's so the company's called Fab Filter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Trying to think. Yeah. Some of the waves.
I'll do a YouTube.
Yeah.
Search.
I don't mind the SSL EQ.
Yeah.
It's good because I feel it's sort of nice and broad, so you can get like a really nice general shaping without stuff getting a bit too harsh. And you kind of just know exactly how stuff is going to react.
Yeah.
So now we've kind of compressed it again. We've sort of done this initial shaping of the EQ, but now we've completely changed the level by like really pushing a couple extra dB out of it.
Okay.
So what we're kind of dealing with EQ wise here is actually not the original vocal we were feeding it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But what about the compression that's in the EQ? That will be turned on still, but it would just be pretty mild?
I would probably just
turn it off.
I would start with it turned off and see how it goes.
Lot of rappers sound pissed poor,
that
they
was the
need
only
to practice
compression that I
some more.
was
Spend
using.
less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. When I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my
so
own
now
flow,
this is 8,
gold
like, I
so
wanna hear
designed
more
in
about,
my
like,
doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with a light on my Kill Bill.
Oh,
Get
man,
surround yourself with
this
big egos that'll
man.
only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. This time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with a light on my Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months now, branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get a crumb. Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with a light on my Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands.
So after all of this, there was just a little bit of that like 1K that we originally boosted that had just like gotten reinforced a little bit much.
Okay.
But
Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice
good,
some
man.
more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit
Now
like
you
an
can even
Ouija
stand
board.
to,
But I
like,
hear
bring
you
the-
like
like, play
lukewarm,
with the
ain't
volume
rare
a little
enough
bit.
like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim
like,
my
brought
doge.
it down,
This my
like,
intelligence and drill,
10
sick with
dB,
a light on
and you
my Kill
still
Bill.
hear that shit
Can
coming
surround
through, you know
yourself
what
with
I
big
mean?
egos
Like,
that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry
been
like a
an issue as
monologue.
well in terms of like, you know, pitching my music to a company to where I've been able to get some placements on Spotify playlists. A lot of the curators that have replied after they listen and critique the song, they say like the vocals need to be mixed better. And whereas sometimes, you know, some people are saying, you know, it's a great mix, vocals mix well. Do you think there are personal tastes, like you could have like, you know, you could put together the best mix yourself, and then if you play it for someone else, they'll probably still find something, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think
subjective.
There's a little bit of both, right? So as in, for the most part, everyone has their own taste, and there's a very big threshold that's going to be kind of covering. There are some general sounds, and they're just sort of general checkboxes that need to be hit. So most people will kind of assume, okay, like this is pretty well balanced. This is something that's cohesive enough that if you were to look for a problem in a mix, people are going to be like really hunting. So there's sort of those thresholds of like, there's definitely a point that I feel every mix needs to get to in terms of just being cohesive and polished. And then after that point, it's all pretty much subjective. Like the difference between a good mix and a great mix is a lot of fucking subtlety. Yeah. And it's a lot of taking this of going like, okay, this is pretty good. Sorry. Whew, this is pretty good. Yeah. But what can we do to really make this vocal work for this track? Yeah. As opposed to I've done a bunch of stuff that will, in this context, generally reinforce what's happening with your vocal, but to do the best job to really bring it to what it needs to be to kind of be like a full radio ready mix. Yeah. It's going through and going, okay, this works. What are those little 1%ers that can kind of cater this vocal to this track? Yeah. And part of it is just like, okay, like track's a little bit slower, needs some slower and heavier compression. Or track's a bit faster, I need to be really careful of my compressor release times. And it's sort of getting it to that, okay, it's at 80%, how can we kind of fine tune it all, you know?
Yeah, it's such a there's such a science to it, like I was saying.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You can't please everybody, yeah.
Oh, never. Yeah, and that's why you need to just sort of be
happy with, you know, like what you, as long as it sounds good to you, and if it's at the level of your standard that you're happy with, which is pretty much what I've been doing, and it's not until later, you know, giving it time to critique again, into where you find the gaps to make it better.
And also part of that is just you getting better. Yeah, like you will have grown based on the experience of having like gone through that and having done those albums, you know.
For sure.
And that's part of it, as in like I can give you all of these tools, but unless you really go and play with and experiment that and go like, oh, this is how my vocals sound when I give myself like 10 dBs of compression or like 20 dBs at 2K, which is the frequency that builds up a bit much. Like then you'll give yourself the framework to really kind of interact with your stuff in a different way.
And like it's repetition like that I've found just working at home, you know, non-stop every day. And like I think to myself, man, if I had done that like a lot earlier, you know, like how you went over to LA and worked, you know, constantly with artists every day, I think with myself, what about if I did that 5 years ago, you know, and constantly did that every day? Man, I might be a platinum fucking artist by now in terms of having polished type of stuff. Because a lot of even stuff, my first EPs and mixtapes, I put them out, they weren't even mastered. They weren't even mixed properly at all, and a lot of them I fucking took down offline because I was embarrassed about the sound quality from my personal taste.
It happens a lot, man. You'd be very surprised. Yeah.
But when I had a radio interview a couple of weeks ago, and the guy that interviewed me, he said, man, I love these songs from your such and such mixtape, and I'm like, man, that's terrible, like in my opinion. He was like, but you know, that's my, like, I can't differentiate in terms of like from your ear to mine, like they sound fine. And I'm like, it's true, each to their own.
I think you make an important point by you saying that it needs to match your standard, because that's the thing. It's not just getting it to sound good, it's not just getting it to hit a certain threshold that you think it's ready to release. It's going, am I happy with how this sounds? Am I ready to kind of let go of this, knowing that at some point I'm probably going to get better and I'm going to look back as like with a more refined ear.
For sure.
Like I listened back to some of the demos recently and some of my recent releases, going through and sort of prepping for some new stuff I'm making for myself, and I'm like, oh shit, like this is like a different song. I just had a different set of ears back then. Like, and that's fine. Like it's knowing the context of where it sort of journeyed to makes it like really nice to go back and go like, okay, like
Yeah.
to be honest, like if you've grown, you probably should dislike the stuff you did
Yeah.
like 5 years ago or whatever the time frame is.
It's
know?
taking pride in acknowledging acknowledging how your stuff sounds now because it's growth compared to then. It's like, yeah, well, I'm on the right path because it's my stuff now sounds better than back then.
Yeah, exactly.
For
and
sure.
that's the thing is those are the two mindsets, right? Of like,
sure.
you can be disappointed that it doesn't meet your standard now, or you can look back and go, oh no, this is a tangible sign of growth.
That's it.
This means I'm moving in the right direction.
For sure.
Yeah.
So in terms of, like, we got 15 minutes left.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry, do you want to dive in on this? So, I wanted to show you just one or two more things that will really help, and then I think you'll be able to kind of deconstruct the rest.
Yeah.
So, as for how would you normally kind of set up a, like, auxiliary or, like, secondary track to kind of bring in sort of, like, reverbs and effects?
Yeah, I don't usually do that, so creating, like, a bus.
Yeah.
So you go into, you mean, so to create, so you can go into, you use bus 11. That's it here.
Okay, so
And that's
go
how you would.
bus 11. Okay, cool. Let's do this. Let's go bus 11, bus 12. So then if I go further down here, got 11 and 12. So let's go on here. We got, go into the waves. 11, 12.
Yeah, a lot of the instruments I've been sending to a bus in the actual mix. And I find by doing that, it's created so much space for everything else to be, you know, to breathe a lot more.
Oh yeah, man. There's something about having something on buses which means it's a lot easier to sort of segment what your effects are doing. So it means you can be a little more extreme when it comes to having a reverb or delay in sort of really fine tuning it, but not having it to kind of compete with what the dry vocal's doing.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo.
So I'm just gonna pull these all up to about like, I don't know, minus 10. Just to show you, I'm just trying to give you like, what are all of the primary things that you would use to shape a vocal? And put it all in here and just give you a means to like interact with it.
That would be awesome.
And then we'll quickly go through the settings on your unison stuff, because I think that's to be honest, a pretty simple thing. It's really the sort of shaping afterwards.
Sure.
So right now, this is what, minus 10?
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, there's poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get a crumb. Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Uma Kill Bill. Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, there's poetry like a monologue. I don't rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get a crumb. Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Kill Bill. Can't surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark.
So MV2, this is just a compressor that focuses on, it's really just sort of like a multi-band, which is just a low and high. To be honest, the only time that it works really well is subtly and when you're slamming the shit out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm compressing really aggressively, but we're only using a tiny little bit.
Yeah.
So bringing that up in parallel means we're taking some of the really extreme elements of what your vocals are doing. So,
a lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But here,
like, it's intense.
It's extreme.
And so all that's doing is sort of really, because this is so cranked, just bringing out that subtle characteristics of what makes your voice unique. And if you bring in just tiny little elements of that, you can kind of bring it in as almost like a little bit of a mask of what's helping your vocal. So I've got that as your kind of vocal parallel.
Cool.
Something's going to help is, let's throw like a slap back in here. So on this one, are you able to, and that's what we got for a wave. I think I saw H delay on here, yeah, nice. So
yeah, I use that a lot. It's pretty dope.
Oh, these things are fucking great, man.
Yeah.
So my setting for a slapback is 16th notes triplet, which is like really quick. A little bit of lo-fi. Take off that low pass, so you're not really getting that kind of like aggression coming through. And everything on parallel, make sure it's 100% wet, because otherwise you're going to be like introducing a lot of phasing, because you're gonna get little bits of dry and affected vocal with full dry and affected, and it's actually gonna kind of distort and phase your vocal. So if you pretty much just have your dry vocal and then all of your effects on 100%, just control the level, just to control the intensity.
Cool.
So now you're.
a lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Kill Bill. Can't surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My lion stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, this poetry like a monologue. I rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now branching out like tree trunks without silly stunts, just in the mud on dark hunts, now get a crumb. A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn.
Slapback is sort of like, it's meant to be so quick that it starts to kind of like mask where the dry vocal ends and the other one begins. And so if you have that as well as a reverb, what you're doing is you're creating kind of a thread between your very dry vocal up front and what the vocals are doing. So you're kind of bringing a focal point to all of the vocals across the track, if that makes sense. So again, this one.
A lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed it in my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with
it's like 1%ers, man.
That's nice. Yeah, the little sprinkles on the top of the KK.
Yeah.
I used to in particular the last album, I thrashed that plugin and I would cut each like vocal that I would like to take out of my say like a verse, and then put it down below and put an effect, a delay, especially like if it's before a chorus, just to add like a drop off and a vocal echo with it as well, or changing the pitch of it just to give it a different characteristic.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you, man.
This. And I love the li-fi, the lo-fi.
Oh, so just like a little bit of distortion, man.
Yeah,
fucking great.
For sure.
Kind of like the silver verb on here. So this is going to be just like a big kind of spacey reverb.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Kill Bill. Can't surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah, came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, there's poetry like a monologue. I rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Compete game, compete knowledge, and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now branching out like tree trunks. Without silly stunts, just in the mud, on dark hunts, now get a crumb. Lot of rappers sound piss poor, they need to practice some more. Spend less time in the Gucci store, have more spirit like an Ouija board. But I hear you like lukewarm, ain't rare enough like a unicorn. Got my own flow, you bozo, designed to dim my doge. This my intelligence and drill, sick with it like Kill Bill. Can't surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah.
Of that. You heard when it was really big, you sort of created this massive like chamber.
Yeah.
So if that's still there, you're gonna kind of get those kind of distant echoes. So it's gonna give the psychological impression that you're singing in this massive fucking hall, while still not trading off the effect of like with especially like this, a rap vocal, like you want to be in your face, like
For sure.
I want to have my headphones in and go like like your cape is right in front of me, you know.
With singers, would you use that turns up more?
Oh, absolutely. Vocals? Yeah. So the way to use reverb is you're obviously like you're creating the impression of a larger space, and you're going to cater that sound depending on kind of the rhythm and the melody. So if you're singing but you still have sort of a closer rhythmic vocal, sort of closer to what this is doing, I'll keep it subtle, or I'll have something like a plate, which is a very kind of like short reverb time.
Okay.
Whereas if you're having something like, you know, like a Selena Gomez, or just something that's like poppier, really kind of slow, drawn out, even like Adele style stuff, you can just have reverb for days, because all this is really doing is taking a core element of the vocal and spreading it out over a larger space.
Okay.
So that's already long and drawn out. You want it to be longer and drawn out to really kind of emphasize, oh, this is a big kind of sprawling vocal. Whereas with you just want those little like it's going to take your transients and almost like I imagine like throwing paper towards like the end of a roll.
Yeah. Or it's a nice little ripple thing. If you throw a thing in a lake, it's just a nice little...
Yeah, that's great. It's funny how much you have to talk in metaphors when it comes to music.
Crazy.
But seriously, like the way we're doing this, because I had that little echo verb, you're getting just that little bit of delay before it hits the reverb, and that's also kind of like chopping up. So it's not going like, you're not going to get 5 or 6 transients kind of like mushed together.
And if you really like listeners that really pay attention to those things, like I appreciate those things a lot. Like when I hear the nice little fine subtleties.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, and like something that is sort of another kind of like 5% is sort of getting these reinforced sounds. And if you have a moment that really kind of needs to get really like big and exciting, or if you have like a one-off moment, we do a lot of time in mixing what's called like a delay throw. So you have a really extreme either delay or reverb or a bit of both just on the end of a word, or just on something that kind of like reinforces it, that kind of moves with the track. Like so got on here, I think especially with what's happening with the low end of your vocal, this thing can be good, but if not set right, it can be really temperamental, especially for that like low 300. So to be honest, I'd actually just go like super clean with it. And if you crank up the volume, I reckon you'll more be able to jump on. Have you tried the Black Legacy one? It should just be that little bit quicker. So similar setting as we had before, about like medium attack, and then just quick. So that way you can kind of get away with more of the peaks.
Yeah.
Probably about there, depending on kind of the input you get.
Yeah.
There we are.
Huh.
So, I mean, even if you just want to jump on there real quick, just give me a hey.
Can surround yourself with big egos that'll only bring you down. My line stands like the back cave, yeah, I came from the underground. Dig up the catalog, there's poetry like a monologue. I'd rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Gain knowledge and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now I'm branching out like tree trunks. Without silly stunts, just in the mud on duck hunts, now get it crunk.
Alright.
Fuck yeah. So, just to kind of have a comparison back to back.
Poetry like a monologue. I'd rap so many subjects, damn, I should be a school. Gain knowledge and use it as a tool. Did 5 albums in 12 months, now I'm branching out like tree trunks. Without silly stunts, just in the mud.
Like, that's a really comfortable level, and that's like without any processing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So part of it is just the that like unison 610, which is like for the right vocal, if you set it perfect, awesome. You just gotta be really careful with it. And I think because your vocals are so fast and you kind of jump back and forth between like different rhythmic cadences, I'd probably just steer clear of it.
Okay.
To be honest, the built-in pre's and the UADs do not get enough credit. They are clean as fuck. Like they're as good as the like Avalon 737s.
Yep. So when you record vocals, do you keep the master processing on?
Normally
I
not.
take it off.
Yeah, normally not, to be honest, because then you're kind of listening to everything as it's already kind of being channeled in at the end, rather than making all of those changes and then kind of refining what you have. But I just wanted to kind of get something down for the case of the hour
so
today.
Just in terms of like, I'll go to so over here, here's the master. So what I do when I record is just take everything off. And
just get rid of it
the right way.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
So you have that, and then you have a copy of all of these things. So I'd say even just like a homework or how you want to work with it is probably like one by one, bring in these plugins and just kind of listen to what they're doing and listen to how it reacts to this vocal differently, considering you literally just like jumped onto a new mic and threw it together. Even just with those subtleties and how we kind of like set that unison and set that console, which isn't coming up for some reason. But
so what was the level of the audio that I was just recording in there?
So the before I put the compressor on it was hitting like around about -14. So you want everything on the input to be about -12 to -18. Anything more than -12, it's going to start like artifacting and clipping.
Okay.
And it's also just, especially for having a lot of dynamics, you just want that headroom to really play with. And then on the 1176, medium attack, super fast, release time, doing around about, like on average, about 2 dBs of compression. And so that coming in, you're committing to what's going to be like a safe enough sound that you can do pretty much anything with it, but it's still from the beginning sort of shaping it in the direction that you want it to go.
Mic sounded nice.
It's dope. I love that thing, man.
Yeah.
It's weirdly, it's one, like pretty much most of the mic shootouts I've done, except for the last 2, which is interesting.
So this, I think, is a version up from the one that I got. I think the one I got was the 440.
Oh, So this is the 540. So the 440, they set back. What did that come to about?
That wasn't too bad. It was only 450, something like that.
Oh, that's from super. Like seriously, with like how good their builds are, they're super reasonably priced. Yeah, I'm lucky I got that one given to me, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah, so, nice. As a gift or
sort of. I entered the raffle at NAMM, but I had done a bunch of work for the company through one of the studios I interned at. So they were like, hey, like just put your name in and they were going to give away a couple mics. And so, that's my story at least of just they gave me the mic. Yeah.
wish somebody would give me a free mic.
Yeah, right. No, that's like one of the only free things I've ever gotten. So that's why
it,
like
yeah,
it has the story.
yeah.